Man, you talk about a shit show. So it started with, I was a government-issued drug addict. It wasn't anybody's fault. It's just kind of the way it is. You can't have that many invasive operations. I mean, the first few months I was at home, I was in the operating room every 48 to 72 hours. And they were robbing from Peter to give to Paul, put my body back together. And, you know, my body is a lot like, not shockingly, it's stubborn as hell. And so what would work for some people, my body takes, 2-3 times as much to have the same effect. And so that played a big role with my body becoming chemically dependent on all these drugs to just keep me in out of enough pain to where I could do rehab and I could do physical therapy and occupational therapy. And
All right, this episode of the 38 Challenge podcast with good friend, mentor, Jacob Schick. Jake is a third-generation combat Marine, soul feeder, CEO of One Tribe Foundation, most importantly, a child of the kingdom. Jacob, thank you for coming here today, brother.
Yeah, man. Honored to be here. Just squeezing it in.
Of course, dude.
From a homie.
Keep fucking grinding.
Yeah, with grace.
Yes, sir, with grace.
Anyone can grind.
I remember I carried the load the first time I met you.
I bet you do.
You came up to me and you said, if you ever make this about yourself, I will take off my leg and I will beat you with it.
that happened. That's true.
Yeah,
I'm not. Is that where I'm supposed to apologize?
No, I just want people to know who the kind of guy you are and kind of just relationship that we have, and that I appreciate you. And this could be a great conversation, brother.
Yeah, man. No, look, it's I was told by people that I love and respect that you could use a little guidance, and that's all I need. I don't. If it's somebody that's already in my circle that vouches for somebody else, that's enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably why I came at you the way I did, because I was like, his feelings are not my problem.
100%. No, and I told you that. I looked you in the eyes and I said, thank you. And I know that it's going to be an amazing relationship ever since then.
Yeah. I think that you've had enough of the, being treated like a wounded little lamb because you're not one. And
100%.
That's what we've learned. You want someone to be broken, you treat them broken. Then they'll be broken.
Right.
Till then, they may be fractured, but you can fix that.
Hell yeah. So before we get going, to kind of put a preface on this conversation, what does vulnerability mean to you? How would you define it?
I would define it as freedom, ultimately, because it's something that, coming from the Marine Corps, then the way I was raised, you couldn't be. It was viewed as a sign of weakness and all the other things that we see. But I don't want vulnerability or mental wellness or things like that to become buzzwords.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to placate the societal pressure for it to be anything other than what it should be. And that's that people should find victory in their vulnerability. While refusing to be hostile to your pride, you can't do one without the other. And when people are willing to unzip their chest cavity and spill their soul on complete strangers and do it in a very honest way, I feel like there's a lot of freedom that's given to you and provided to you from that, because we've lived so much of our lives trying to placate to what this group thinks or what they're doing or what this group's thinking or doing. And it's just like I tell people everywhere, and I tell our kids, wake up and do you. Everybody else is taken.
Mm-hmm.
Wake up and do you. But vulnerability to me it's strength, and it's freeing, and it's, we got to find solace in the fact that we're all flawed, every one of us, and that it's by design, but one thing that we've lost is accountability. How accountable can you be, first and foremost, to you, let alone to anybody else? Because you tell me how accountable you can be to you, and then I'll tell you how accountable you can be to somebody else.
100%, man. I wanted to get your definition of that because I knew it would be different than what else has been spoken on this podcast. And I wanted it to be for you to give that definition before going into your story, because it's such a powerful story. And I mean, not to compare traumas as you say, but I mean, you've been through your fair share of shit. So why don't we start
once or twice, man?
Once or twice. Why don't we start from the day that you were injured and why you are capable of taking off your leg and beating me with it? Why that's actually even physically possible?
The day I got hit was September 20th, 2004 in the SUNY Triangle. I was there with 1st Battalion, 23rd Marines, Bravo Company, the Battling Bastards, and that was the most wired, tight group of motivators I've ever had the privilege of working with. And even though majority of us were just dumb kids, we were just well-trained dumb kids. And, I still am very close to a lot of those guys. And it was a react mission that got called that morning, and it was before the sun came up. We were all still kind of dragging ass because the night before we had a standoff, the ING, Iraqi National Guard. And I just had a bad feeling about it. And I like to say that to me, the gut feeling to me is usually God. But this day I felt like it was a cross between God and my grandfather from beyond the grave, because my grandfather fought in the UO in World War II. And the gut feeling I had after the reactors call is I woke the guys up, and the team is me and 9 Marines. And as soon as I walked out of the tent, the bad feeling went right in my throat, and I knew we were going to get hit. I just didn't know by what or how bad it was going to be. And so, I stopped for a minute just to kind of assess the situation, and I saw the guys dragging all their shit to the 2 vehicles, because all we had to operate in was 2 two-door soft top Humvees. And they just they didn't look like you see in movies and stuff, where they're all wired tight and they have all their gears in the right spot, and like they look like shit. And it made me proud. It like made my chest swell with pride, and I was like, those are my dudes. Like, those are my bros. And it pumped me up. And and this is all in nanoseconds, how fast the mind works. And something told me to get the bomb blanket out of commanding officer's Humvee, and I did. And took it to the lead vehicle, and I kicked the driver out of the driver's seat. Took the radio from the radio man, and something told me to get on the net and radio with my right hand, drive with my left hand. Told all the guys to button up. And they knew that at this point that I knew something wasn't right. And it just wasn't voiced. Everybody buttoned up, and I jumped in, I gassed it, and then 3 minutes later we did a triple stack tank mine. And it was pressure plate ignited, and then blew up directly beneath me. It was three 155 mics, which 3 155 millimeter mortar rounds stacked. And for the layman that doesn't understand ordnance or unexploded ordnance, it just means it was a big ass bomb. And it blew me 30 feet to the top of the Humvee. And I knew in the air, I knew it was bad. And stuck the landing with my head, because I'm a Marine and we believe in good form. And I like to say it because God's a comedian. I never lost consciousness, and I never went into shock. And it took the Black Hawk 42 minutes to come and get me. So it was a long day at work. But I'm really, really grateful for how it all went down. The thing that hurts me the most is for the guys to see me that way. I mean, because that's my family, no matter how you slice it. For anyone that says blood's thicker than water, hold my salad and watch this. Because I got more than one that I could call right now and say, I need help. You're probably not going to make it. And they would just say, send me the address. And I asked people on the day, like, how many people in your family, in your blood family, do you know right now would die for you without hesitation? And be honest about it. Like, because I know a hell of a lot more that have nothing to do with my DNA that would.
Right.
And so there's something to be said for that. That's a bond. And these guys, I knew when I hit the deck that I was hurt bad, and I couldn't see out of my right eye. I could only see out of my left eye because I had a piece of the lenses from my shatterproof lenses went in my right eye. And the guy that I kicked out of the driver's seat was yelling my last name. And I was trying to pull myself back to the Humvee with my right arm just towards the sound of his voice. And I was flopping my left arm around trying to get it to hit metal to be able to get my rifle. And to no avail on either side, because when I looked down, I realized I was just scooping sand. And so that's when I started my self-assessment, and I knew what I'd already known, that I was hurt, and it was severe. And so before I even continued my self-assessment, because the first thing I noticed was how jacked up my left arm, my left hand was, I said a prayer to God, and I just said exactly verbatim, I said, hey, big man, just don't take me in front of my brothers. All I ask is just don't take me in front of my family. Just don't allow them to watch me die here like this. And as soon as the skids leave the deck, I'm all yours. Just don't allow it to happen in front of them. That became my hyper focus that day. And then I went on my self-assessment and realized, that my left leg had multiple compound fractures. It was wrapped around itself. My fibia and my tibia were sticking out and exposed. And my combat boot had been blown off, because I remember seeing my foot inverted and turned back the other way, and noticing that, okay, if that blew my boot off and didn't take my leg with it, that was a significant amount of force.
Yeah, dude. Holy shit.
And so, and I still hadn't taken a breath because all my ribs were broken, because the dashboard disengaged and hit me in my chest. Steering wheel hit me in my chest, made all my mags explode. And that's why the guy kicked out of the driver's seat was yelling my names. He just saw my rounds and blood, but no me. And, he was just, that was hard for me, because I wanted to get back to the Humvee to tell him two things. One, hey, bro, I'm right here and I'm okay-ish. And two, I need you to stop yelling, because you're making us a target. Because over there, the sand's super fine. It's like baby powder fine. And it takes forever for it to land. I had a buddy of mine last week called it moon dust. And I was like, man, that's a good description. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't know, because I've never been on the moon. And but it takes forever for it to settle. And so I'm sitting there doing my self-assessment, noticed that my left arm, 5 inches of ulnar bone in my left arm was blown out. Part of my left hand was hanging by my elbow. Had shrapnel in my face, and my neck, and my chin, burns. And but the only thing that would function was my right hand and my right arm. And so finally the guys found me and gathered around me, and we got you, Schick, we got you. And right before that, the guy that I kicked out of the driver's seat had yelled my first name.
Mm. Jake or Jacob?
He yelled Jacob, and it gutted me. Because I knew that was coming from a place of love and desperosity, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. And it just broke my heart. And I'll never forget that, man. I mean, I hear that like it happened yesterday. And it's tough. I mean, you have these memories of these different parts of your life, but I think the more at peace we get, and the more that we work on accepting the fact that you couldn't change how it happened, you couldn't change how it played out, and you surely can't change it now. But you're still here. You're still on the top side of the soil. So what are you going to do now? And that's what I focus on. But the guys got me the second vehicle, loaded me up, took me back to command post, and Doc was right there ready to work on me, started working on me right away. And, I was really grateful for this time, because I got to tell all the guys how much I love them, how much they mean to me, and that, they made me a better warrior just by being around them. Mm-hmm. And I got to hold all their right hands, or with my right hand, got to hold their hands and tell them that. And I'm really grateful for that time, because the Marine bravado and the tough guy bullshit went out the window. It was just soul-to-soul connection. And I was grateful for that, because we didn't really not only allow ourselves to do that, but we didn't afford ourselves the opportunity to do that. And I think that that's a pretty paramount piece of gear to have in day-to-day life, is to be able to stop and tell the person you love, like, yeah, I appreciate you and I'm grateful for you. Mm-hmm. And, you make me better, and you make my life better, and you enrich my life. I mean, whether it's your partner or your kids, to let them know, because you never know. I mean, when your car's going to get pulled, you don't know.
Right.
But I'm sitting there talking to the guys, and Doc And then I start yelling at Doc to hit me again because he only hit me with 2 sticks of morphine, and I knew he had more. I'd seen his little Doc backpack, and I was kind of pissed about it because the pain was just so gnarly that it was past the point of no return, and I was real pissed off at this point.
Right.
It was like when you
I can't imagine.
slam your finger in the door and someone asks you, like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And then for whatever reason, I'm sure there's science behind it, but when they say, every time they say, "Are you okay?" the pain gets worse.
Right.
I don't understand it, but I know there's science behind it. That's how I felt. And so I was like, "Hey, man, I need you to get me more high, like right now." And he was not acknowledging the fact that I was asking to hit me again. And so then I yelled at him and called him a stingy bastard. And this was after the Marine that, had to help Doc. He was like Doc's assistant, which is an oxymoron. It's to have a Marine be that. And he stepped on my left leg on accident. And so I politely asked him to get away from me. And then he got all emotional, and I was like, "Damn it, man, this is just a giant shit show." And kept asking Gunn, like, "Why don't I hear rotors?" Because I knew I was bleeding out. I was like, "Why don't I hear rotors?" And it was just a big thing, man. But it was, it's a day I remember like yesterday, and I remember the bird finally got there, and the guys loaded me up, and I remember right before they put me on the bird, and I remember thinking to myself, there's no way in hell this pain could get any more intense because everything hurt. Like breathing hurt. Anytime I was barely moved hurt. It was like being blown up all over again. And they're loading me on the Black Hawk, and the rotor wash blew up like the bandages. And so all that sand got in the bandages and got in my wounds. And it was, I was like, "Good one, God, just got worse." Like, good, well played. And they put me on the bird, and my staff sergeant was the last one off the bird. And he looked at me right in my eyeballs. I see it right now. And he was trying not to cry. And he kissed me on my forehead, and he said, "We'll see you soon, Jack London." And because my grandfather, first generation is Jack London, second generation is Jack London Schick Jr. And he obviously didn't like the name Jake, so he just called me Jack London all the time.
It's a dope name.
And agreed.
Yeah.
And I knew he was lying to me. He was trying not to cry when he did it, and it pissed me off. And so, in hindsight, unfortunately, we lost him a couple of years ago. But like in hindsight, it helped me, because I grew up fighting, and all I knew how to do when I was back into the corner was fight. And so it was like that's just what I reverted to. And looking back at it, like pissing me off was the best thing he could do because it just made me want to fight forward, even though I couldn't physically fight. Like I was going to fight to live. And I believe in that. I believe in the will to live, given the opportunity. And bird took off. And the hardest part of it all was when the pilot dipped the bird, and I could see out the peripheral vision in my left eye, seeing all the guys looking up. And, that crushed me. It was hard leaving them. It was because I left my family. And I remember the pilot straightening out the bird, and I knew we were beating feet. And I got the attention of one of the litter crew, and he came over to me and moved his headset and put his ear right over my mouth, and I yelled, "How long?" Because in the back of those birds, like if you're not wearing a headset, you can't hear shit. It's really loud. And I remember when I yelled it, I immediately regretted it because I felt the life leaving my body, and I knew I was dying. And I was like, "Damn it, I just used valuable energy." Because regardless of how long this flight is, it doesn't matter. It's not going to change whatever his answer is going to be. But he radioed the captain, came back to me, and yelled in my right ear, and he said 12 mics or 12 minutes. And that's when I told God, "Hey, big man, I'm going to have to renege on that original verbal agreement because I think I can do 12 more minutes." As if I had a say,
Right.
Obviously.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's some of us humans can be in a situation where if we're willing to meet God halfway, I think you do get a say. And for me, it was, I just wanted to be standing tall at the base of the steps when my guys came home. And I wanted to be able to shake every one of their hands and look them in the eyeballs and tell them welcome home and job well done. And that became my goal from that moment on. And It was just a gnarly journey to get there, but I got there. And going to Balad and Field Hospital right outside of Baghdad. And I remember as soon as the bird touched down, there's a whole team of people waiting on me, and they pulled me off that bird. And I got more pissed because they kept saying name, rank, social, trying to keep me from passing out. And after the fourth or fifth time, I finally just pointed to my ribs and I said, it's tattooed right there. I'm not saying it again.
Right.
Like, screw you people trying to save my life. And but it was the whole slamming the finger in the door thing. Like, everything made it worse. And it was just like, I just wanted silence. I wanted silence. Just work on me and do what you have to do, but don't talk to me. Like, I didn't want to talk anymore. And I remember they got me in the tent, and I remember this doc was sewing up my face, and he said, oops. And I looked over at him and I said, what do you mean, oops, doc? And he said, hey,
Never something you want to hear.
right?
Yeah.
And he said, hey, Marine, I messed up on your stitches. We're going to start again. And I said, hey, doc, I don't know. At this point, they had a sheet up to my chest.
Where was he working on? Your face looks great, man.
Yeah, what's behind the beard.
Okay,
And
fair enough.
And then you can see where I had shrapnel going in my cheek right here,
Mm-hmm.
and then some right here, and in my chin, some in my neck. But he was sewing me up right here, I remember. And so he said, oops. I said, hey, doc, I don't know if you see me from the neck down, but I'm fairly certain the scratches on my face are the least of our worries right now. And he did this little nod to the anesthetist, and that's the last thing I remember. Like, please put this on a bitch to sleep. And I woke up, and Nurse Jax was on my right side. I'll never forget her. I swear to this day, she was an angel, man. And she woke me up, and she said, first words, said, hey, Marine, I hate to tell you this, we had to take your right foot. And I remember doing my self-assessment, and my right foot hurt, but it looked normal. And my left foot was jacked. My left leg was jacked. My left arm was jacked. And so I was like, okay, right foot's broken. Her right leg's broken, but not horribly. And I looked down and saw one bump, and I just smiled and thought to, and I said audibly, and I closed my eyes and went back to my self-assessment. And I audibly said with a smile on my face, took the wrong damn foot. And because in my mind, I was like, it's good enough for government work. They had a 50-50 shot. And she looked at me and she said, no, baby. And I'll never forget, she took a surgical glove out of her cargo pocket, and she bent down and filled it with sand. And she held it up and she said, this was your foot when you got here. It was dead when you got here. So then I immediately went to, I bet you Doc knew that my foot didn't have a pulse, and I've since confirmed with him, obviously. He's like, I'm not going to tell you that.
Right.
Like, I'm not,
Make matters worse.
that's kind of bullshit. I think you should. It's my foot, But no, Doc, the same thing, man. I think he's an angel on earth, and he knew exactly what the hell he was doing, and he definitely, every step of the way up to the point of my ass being in this seat right here has to do with people greater than I'll ever be. That's just, I guess I get to enjoy some of the fruits of it, and try not to F it up along the way. And so, it was that was a long road, man. That was a very long road. And I called my dad from a sat phone in the recovery room, and Nurse Jax told me, she said, there's a bird waiting on you right now to take you to Germany. And he goes, you have anybody you want to call? I was like, yeah, I need to call my dad. And then I just called my dad the night before, 4 nights before that, and just to tell him, because something told me to call him. Because when I left, I told my family, hey, look, don't write me anything. Don't send me anything. I've got to, I'm not going to write you. And I don't watch the news, and no news is good news. See you in 7 months. I got a job to do. And the point there being, my family puts a Jerry and Springer, and I didn't need any of their shit here affecting my mind or what I needed to do over there. And that's just the way I was. I mean, it was like I was hyper focused on what we had to do, whatever it was. And I didn't want anything from back here affecting me and the work I was doing over there. But something told me to call my dad the night we got the orders to go to Dulab. And I did. I went and called him. And as soon as I said he answered the phone, I knew he was at home by himself. It was about 10:30 at night, and he answered the phone. And I said, "Hey, Pop," and he knew it was me because I'm the only kid that calls him Pop.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing he says, "Why am I talking to you?" You know, it's like he knew that I knew something wasn't right.
Right.
And I just said, "Just want to tell you I love you, and I'm the man and Marine I am because of you, and I need you to know that." The next thing he says, "You better be all right." I said, I'm all right. He said, "When can I talk to you again?" He knew better than to ask, where you guys going? What are you doing? And I said, 9 days. And he said, "You better be all right, and I love you, son." I said, "I love you too, Pop." And then 4 days later, I'm calling him, and he answered the phone. And I said, "Hey, Pop." He said, "Why am I talking to you?" I said, "They got me." He said, "What do you mean they got you?" And I said, "They got me, and I'm hurt pretty bad, and they had to take my right foot." And it was quiet on the other end of the phone. And there's usually like a 2 or 3 second delay anyway, but this was way longer than that. And then he just said, "Are you going to make it?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Bubba, we'll meet you in Germany, and, it's going to be all right. You just keep fighting." And I went from being, one of the world's most elite warriors to being this little kid because all I said was, "Please hurry," because I didn't know how much time I had left. And I didn't know if I was going to make it to Germany. And, but
How old were you when all this was happening?
22. Yeah, I was 22. And it was a very emotional and humbling time. It was one of those because, I'd never in training, and when we started our workup, I think in 2003, and nobody ever said anything about being severely wounded and living.
Mm-hmm.
It was always live or die, live or die, live or die, kill or be killed. It was never severely wounded. You got to work on, trauma response ever. And so I didn't even mentally prepare for it. I'd completely mentally prepared to be killed. And I remember sitting my family down and saying, "Hey, listen, I just want you to know, if I die over there, know that I died doing exactly what I love to do. And I'm proud of this legacy that I've carried on, and it's a small part of this thing called freedom that we all take for granted, and I wouldn't change it. So celebrate that. Don't be sad for me because I'm getting to die under my terms." And of course that wasn't the case. And
Right.
so I was real pissed off at God for quite a while, and easy target, But I ended up flying to Germany, and I was only in Germany about 17 hours, and they stabilized me, and I left Germany and went to Bethesda, Maryland, and I was only there for 3 months, and then they moved me from Bethesda to Bamsey and San Antonio, and I ended up doing 15 months there. And it was all told, I had over 50 operations and 23 blood transfusions, and but the death and destruction didn't stop when I got home. I mean, it was every week. It seemed like I was paying my final respects to a flag draped body, and it sucked. All of us sucked, and it was one of those things though that every chance I got, I would go visit the other wounded and talk to their families and try and give them something resembling hope that it's not. This doesn't have to define who you are, and it was, dude. I had no idea how long that journey was going to be. I had no idea how long it was going to take to. I knew the physical recovery was going to be arduous, but I had no idea about the mental and emotional recovery. Like that was the part that I didn't. Because even when they told me, you've been diagnosed with traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder, I was like, whatever. This is people in white coats with too much time on their hands. You don't know me. I'm a Marine. This shit doesn't affect us.
Mm-hmm.
And how wrong I was.
One of the things you say is that physical pain reminds you you're alive. Mental pain tests your will to stay that way.
Fact.
What did that? I mean, it sounds like the physical battle was just the beginning.
Dude, I'll take that 10 times out of 10. Right. Anyone says, "Hey, you take getting blown up all over again," or being your deepest, darkest hole, being most depressed unmotivated you've ever been. I'm taking the bomb 10 times out of 10. It's easier. It's way more temporary.
What did that depression and anxiety look like? I guess that whole mental battle, where did that start? And
Yeah, I think everybody's rock bottom is different. I don't think that it's something that you can cookie cut. And I've always said, and I always will say, I think my rock bottom involves my heart stopping and not drawing breath, because I've been pretty damn low. And there was a point in my life where, I had a plan and an exit strategy, and a phone call completely changed the trajectory of my life. And
what was that phone call?
that we lost the guy that I fought with, and it was like shit. I mean, after all that, because we didn't nickname ourselves the Battle Ambassadors, and it was like, shit, dude, after all that. And what more could we do? And I knew that I was like, well, I can't check out. It's going to be, I can't do that to my brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't even think about my family. It was them. It was my brothers I thought about, because you're able to justify, okay, the family will be fine. They have everything they need. They have each other, blah, blah, blah. It was my Marines that I was like, I won't do that to them. And then, find myself not too long later and riding my Harley down the tollway 120 miles an hour, blackout drunk, and thinking about a 18-wheeler pushing me into the concrete barrier and smiling. It's not uncommon for guys like me to not have a fear of death, but when you start inviting it, it's cause for concern.
Absolutely. So how did you start to come out of this depression and this darkness? What did that whole process look like?
Man, you talk about a shit show. So it started with, I was a government-issued drug addict. It wasn't anybody's fault. It's just kind of the way it is. You can't have that many invasive operations. I mean, the first few months I was at home, I was in the operating room every 48 to 72 hours. And they were robbing from Peter to give to Paul, put my body back together. And, my body is a lot like, not shockingly, stubborn as hell. And so what would work for some people, my body takes, 2-3 times as much to have the same effect. And so that played a big role with my body becoming chemically dependent on all these drugs to just keep me in out of enough pain to where I could do rehab, and I could do physical therapy and occupational therapy. And, I was just, when I left the hospital and they gave me this giant bag of drugs, and I knew how that was going to end, because if one pill works great, 5's going to be awesome. And, if there's an envelope to be pushed, I'm going to push it. And so I did. And it's like I always tell people, I suck at doing anything in moderation. Good, bad, or indifferent. It'll probably be a hell of a show. And, I just took it. I take everything to the extreme and I push it as far as I possibly can. I'm going to take it right up to the breaking point. And I think that's indicative too, though, of having, super high highs, super low lows, not knowing what your baseline is, trying to find what does that new normal look like. And I think that's ever evolving throughout life for everybody. But for me, it started after that phone call, and I called my doc back in San Antonio the next morning, and I said, hey, doc, it was later that morning. And I said, hey, doc, good news, I'm getting off all the drugs. And at this point, I was taking 55 pills 3 times a day and completely and totally dependent upon medication just to even function. And she said, well, how are you going to do that? And I said, well, I'm just not going to take the first dose. And she said, well, I'd highly advise against that. And I said, why is that? And she said, because you're going to have a massive heart attack and die. I was like, Roger, that plan A is a no-go. What does plan B look like? Mm-hmm. And she said, well, you're going to have to come back to San Antonio and we're going to have to wean you off the drugs. It was just not what I wanted to hear. I didn't want to hear that shit. I was like, my body equates that place with just pain and misery, and I don't want to be there. And, but I went back and I tried the whole slow withdrawal thing, and I remember, I got these pills to counteract the withdrawal effects, and I really liked those pills, and I was like, shit, it's just more pills. And finally just got sick and tired of slowly withdrawing, and I locked myself in the guest house across the street, and I wouldn't let anybody in. I only let one guy in who's another Marine, and God bless him. I wasn't real easy on him ever. But he showed up every day, just like he said he would day one that I got to BAMC. And I let him in, and he'd bring me water and stuff. And I think he would make sure that I was still, my ticker was still ticking. But after about 12 days of just having no control of my bodily functions and waking up to only pass out, and it was miserable. Like, I've never been that miserable in my life, ever in my life. But it was like day 13, 14, I woke up, took a shower, and it was like nothing ever happened. And I swore to myself, never again. Like, you're never going to put yourself in this situation again. And that was it for prescribed drugs. And so that was hell, man. But that was really the beginning of a journey that is going to be ongoing till the day I die, because of course alcohol's right there to catch my fall.
Right.
Because I was like, okay, well, I'm not taking pills anymore. I can justify drinking enough to float a ship, because I'm not doing pills.
Right.
Again, the whole anything in moderation. And so, but I did that really, really well for a while. And the whole time I'm trying to do deep dives with myself, and where am I mentally? Where am I emotionally? And, I never really broke down. I never did the woe is me and felt sorry for myself. The first time I cried throughout all of it was the day that I met another Marine that came to the hospital. Good friend of mine named Ty, who we lost a little while ago. And I left his room, and that was the first time I was in my wheelchair, and I just lost it right there at the nurse's station because I was so pissed off. I wanted vengeance, and seeing him and how badly he was hurt and how badly he was burned, and he was in the burn ward across the hall from where I was in the ortho ward. And it was nice to see another Marine, because being in an Army facility, like, you can only call a soldier so many times before the shit hits the fan. And when I heard there was another Marine on deck, I was like, I'm going to go see him right now. And I don't give a shit what rules I'm going to break or who I'm going to piss off. I'm going to see him. If I have to low crawl with one arm, I will. But I will get in that room. And they knew that, unless you knock me out, I'm getting in that room.
Right.
And so they did the process, because they would have to use this little human crane thing to lift me out of the bed and put me in my electric wheelchair. I called it my little black Cadillac, and they took it from me at some point because I think I put too many holes in the walls. But it was that was the first time I really had just submitted to my emotion, and my anger with God grew a lot that day. Because it was the whole completely ignoring the idea of free will, and that you need somebody to blame. And he's an easy target. And so that was that, I think, was the day that was the beginning of my emotional healing journey, was that day that I met Ty. Because I knew, okay, now it's not just about me.
Right.
Like, now I've got to focus on helping this Marine as much as I can, and his family as much as I can. Even though when I left his room, the doctors were telling his parents, get anybody you want to tell him goodbye here. We don't think he'll be alive in the next 48 hours, so get him here. And he lived for another decade. And so we're grateful for that. But that was the beginning. And it was by not focusing on my own shit and how gnarly my own body was and how gnarly my own pain was. That was really the beginning of my emotional healing, was being able to go and talk to the other wounded, talk to their families, what to expect, the people that were just showing up, saying, hey, listen, strap in. This is going to be a wild ride, and there's nothing fun about it. But that was the beginning for me, and it was pouring myself in other people that made my soul a little lighter, and seeing that there's pain everywhere. It's not just my own. Everybody understood that this sucks. Everybody, not only the wounded in the beds, but the families knew, like, this is a result of a war that we didn't ask for. And this is a result of humans having the capability of just being completely horrid to other humans. And but it is what it is. Like, we are where we are and living in the freest country in the world for a reason. And it takes that. I mean, it takes violence of action and to remove the personal element and understand that there's nothing personal about it. It's just business.
Mm-hmm. So what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned when you were healing emotionally and mentally? What are things that got you through the other side?
Probably first and foremost that my control stops outside of my own skin. As much as we want to BS ourselves that we have control of these different aspects of our lives or other people's lives, you don't. It stops outside of your own skin. Be still, know that I'm God. Keywords, be still. Accept your humanity, understand you only have control over you. Your influence is a whole different thing, and you can use it for good or bad. I've done both. But understand you only have control over you. And so I got hyper-focused on my own physical journey, and I really pushed myself to be able to stand at the base of those stairs and look my brothers in the eyes and shake their hand and say welcome home. And I did. I mean, I achieved that goal. I was in the emergency room the next day, and then I got operated on the very next day. But I did it. Mm-hmm. That's the point. And almost died that week again. But that was because of a massive infection. And but man, I learned a lot of lessons along the way. And being a believer, I think, I'll tell you now, had I not been before I went, being severely wounded and just witnessing some of the things I witnessed, either secondhand or directly from myself, I would have had no option than to think, okay, there's something higher out there.
Right.
Like, I remember this one story when they transferred me from Bethesda to San Antonio, and my family was told by the Marine liaison, okay, Jake's going to be going from here to there. This is when he'll be there. Well, nobody told us, specifically me, that we were going to have a stop in Scott Air Force Base in Illinois. And so, they load me up and I have the nerve blockers in my left arm, my left leg, and I feel the bird touch the deck, and we land, and this Marine walks on the bird, and it's like loud as hell. And just to give you an idea, like, how sensitive to everything my body was, like, there was a sign that my family had put on my bed in San Antonio that just said, please do not touch the bed, because every little movement forever hurt. And this Marine walks on, is motivated, gunny. He starts yelling, welcome to Scott Air Force Base, Illinois, Corporal Schick. I'm Gunnery Sergeant, whatever, the schmuckatelli. And we're honored to have you. And I open my eyes, and first I'm like, too much, bro. Yeah, like, don't.
Take it easy.
And I looked at him and I said, verbatim, and I looked at him and I said, who the fuck are you and where the fuck am I? And he, all of a sudden, like, he knew, like, oh shit, nobody briefed him. And his eyes got real big, and I was a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps, man. And here I am, a corporal. And the only reason I'm a corporal is because the commandant thought I was going to die. So he was like, promote this Marine. Because I wasn't promotable for 12 months. And because of page 11s. And I snapped at him and I knifed him. I said, give me your cell phone. And he was like, yeah, like fumbling his cell phone and give it to me. And called my dad, and I was like, just pissed off, obviously, not knowing why I was there. And it was the first time my dad got my ass, because he was like, I don't know. I'm like, he's supposed to know how this whole thing works. And he ended up hanging up on me, and rightfully so. And so here I am at this Air Force base. It's not set up at all to deal with guys like me, and because of my injuries. And I remember all these specialists coming in, and my body started shutting down. and they were able to stabilize me, but I was out. And I remember it was like the next day or the day after, I think it was the next day, but the door opened and my head was turned to the left and I hadn't opened my eyes, and I could feel I was super, super weak. And the guy walked in and he came to the right side of my bed and he said very softly, he's like, "Hey, Corporal Schick, I'm Chaplain so-and-so." And I just said, before you even opened your mouth, I knew you were a man of God because I felt the presence of God when the door opened. And he got emotional. And then I looked at him and I was like, "I don't know why you're crying, but, I just was telling you what I felt." I think even if I wasn't a believer before that happened, that I would have felt that same thing. Because I never saw, like, a lot of people were like, did your light flash before your eyes? You see a ball of light? I'm like, no, I didn't see shit ever. So, I mean, maybe that's not good for me. Who knows? Well, time will tell. But it was like, I knew, like, I felt it from that guy. And I mean, he sat there, we talked for hours. And I remember the day I left, which I think was the following day, to go to San Antonio. And the whole hospital had like lined up down the hall all the way to the Bird, where they were taking me up the ramp of the Bird. And he and his family, because he had like 6 kids, were at the very end of the ramp. And I remember, like, his wife was crying. And I was like, I didn't even meet you. Like, that was a really cool experience. And I just remember being like, you should have been less of a dick when you got here. Like, this would be way cooler with all these people lined up. But I remember being on the Bird, flying to San Antonio, and we stopped somewhere in South Texas. And I remember reading the loadmaster's mouth, and he was talking to one of the crew. And he said, and I read his lips, he said, "We're about to fly around a tornado." And I remember looking, just being like, "Really, God? Like, throw me a bone, man. Like, just, like, come on." And I remember we landed, and it was to drop off a body. And I didn't know that. And then they told me, and I was like, okay, you need to shut it. And it just, all these little things along the way that were really put things into perspective for me. And knowing that, ultimately at the end of the day, I learned this life, I think we have 2 objectives as human beings, regardless of race, color, creed, religion, socioeconomic status, that from the time we're born to the time you die, and it's to love and be loved. And I think everything in between is filler. I think everything in between is why everyone knows who Jerry Springer or the Kardashians are. It's just straight up distractions from that first or second objective. And then ultimately it doesn't have anything to do with us. Like, how are you going to leave this place better than you found it? What is your journey going to look like? Because anyone who's like, "Oh, I had this great, wonderful childhood and I never really had any bad days, and me and my spouse have never even been in an argument." And I'm like, you're completely full of shit.
Yeah.
Just so full of shit that you stink. Just stop acting like you're, because just no, that person doesn't exist.
That doesn't make you human.
No. Yeah. And that's why I'm so open and honest about my scars, the ones you can't see, especially with the boys. I want them to have something to shoot for. I want them to have a legitimate example of living in vulnerability and having ownership and accountability, and what a healthy relationship should be. I want them to think like, if I get halfway to what Dad and Ashley have, then I'll be good. But it starts with me. Like, I've got to be good with me first. Because then you can go help other people empty their buckets. But if yours is overflowing, you have no business helping someone else. I mean, it's the blind leading the blind. Don't do that. And a lot of people don't like to hear that. They're like, "Hey, Jake, when's One Tribe doing another event? Been struggling. I really want to come help out." I'm like, well, let's focus on you first, because you have the equation backwards. Let's focus on you so you can go help someone in order to help someone, not help someone in order to help you. And I feel like that's where we get it way too twisted. We're like, "Oh, if we just go, yeah, that's going to help you momentarily, but at some point you're going to be back in that room by yourself. And are you going to have the ability to be alone, or will you find yourself lonely? Because those are two different things, as the global pandemic taught us.
Right.
They're two completely different things. And I learned along the way, too, that I need to ask for help. I need to not be so stubborn and so attached to my pride that to feel like I can do anything on my own, because I can't, let alone live well. You know, that's the thing that I learned, that I got to ask for help as much as I don't want to, and as much as I can say, oh, my childhood, because the way I was raised, it doesn't matter. Ask for help. It's going to make you better. I lean on people all the time, whether they know it or not, just to be better. You know, I have mentors and I have people that I call on, and I have the very, very small circle by design that I lean in on, you know, and a lot of times they don't even know that I'm doing it, but I do. And I tell them, you know, I lean on you a lot. So appreciate you. I thank you. And I'm grateful for you for being who you are, because I can't always be the strong one. I can't always be the person that society's made me. You know, I'm not always going to be the stoic stone that is emotionless. You know, I have feelings too. I'm human too.
Right.
And I think that's what we forget, is we get so caught up in these titles because they're so societal. Just like being able to judge somebody and go, okay, well, we put them in this proverbial box because then they make sense to us. And then we can semi-justify the reasoning behind the things they're doing. And then that person goes in this box. And it's like, no, I don't. Keep your fucking box. You know, I'm not going to play that game, because I'm going to wake up and do me, because everybody else is taken. And, you know, if the way that I live, right things, right reasons, the rest will take care of itself. You know, if that intimidates you or makes you nervous, that's a you problem, not a me problem. It's like I tell people all the time, I'm not going to lower my standards of living for your comfortability.
Absolutely, man. So 2 questions. One, when was the first time that you asked for help?
Oh, the first time was probably the night that I met Ty, and I got back to my room, and because I mean, man, that just it messed with my head so bad, because there was nothing I could do. It's like seeing your family member in this situation, that because I knew I couldn't go fight on his behalf. I knew that I couldn't go get vengeance on his behalf. And so I was just a prisoner in my own head, you know, and I couldn't wipe my own ass, you know, like I needed help for everything.
Right.
So I had to get help without asking for it, first and foremost. But that was the first time I asked God, you know, I need you to help me find something resembling peace, because I'm so angry right now that I can't see straight. My gums are tingling, and I do not have an outlet. You know, and I can only hit this damn button so many times. You know, so the first time was the first time. Probably that night when I was I was a wreck, man. I was a wreck in my own head, and I couldn't escape my own brain. And we all have that ability, even now. Like the hardest thing to do is to turn it off.
Right.
And to just be able to just be still. Be still. No, I am God. And that's the hardest thing, because it's like, you know, you bury so many people and you go through all these losses and you deal with all these different demons. And our demons, a lot of times, have the ability to be significantly louder than most people's demons. And I think that's because we're masters just like everybody else. Like, no one beats the shit out of us more than us. You know, and I think that's everybody, though. You know, we're our own worst critics. And, you know, I get told pretty often, like, stop, be a little easier on yourself. And I'm like, well, when I wake up and I'm okay with mediocrity, then I'll probably be easier on myself. But until then, you know, I need to figure it out. This is my journey. You know, but that's the first time for sure. I distinctly remember just asking for peace and for calm. was the night that I met Ty, was because that really got to me. That affected me greatly.
Did you get the peace in the calm that night?
I think I ended up asking for a bolus, which is basically a big push of drugs. So I got it, but not
Yeah.
not the way I should have gotten it.
So throughout this long, brutal journey, how has asking for help and vulnerability, how has that changed?
Well, I wouldn't be sitting in this chair, man. I wouldn't be. That's the thing. It's like I tell Jack and Jamo, like, live a life worthy writing about. You know, don't ever settle for mediocrity. And the only way you can do that is by asking for help from other people that have been there and done that, have more wisdom than you. Just if they've lived longer, you have something to learn. Like, a good friend of mine, we were doing an interview, and a good friend of mine said, and this is a very well-known person, and he said, you know, I try and live my life in humility and understanding and accepting the fact that every person that I meet, if I just meet them with an open heart and an open mind, every person I meet is better at something than I am. And if I can just have humility and listen, then I will be better by default. And it's the same. It's the same with all the things I've done or accomplished, or, you know, all the societal shit. Like, there's a long line of people that are the why behind that. You know, it goes well beyond me. But that's what I want to be around. I want to be around people that challenge me and demand more of me and do not settle and don't settle for mediocrity. And they expect more. I want to be held to a higher standard because I will perform better. Like, I don't like the just middle of the road. Like, I want to do shit that scares me in a very healthy way.
Right.
You know, and I want to push myself because, again, I want our boys to understand nothing is given. Everything is earned. You know, when you walk out on a field to play, what you do when nobody's watching, when you have no fanfare, is what justifies you being on that field or not, regardless of what that is, what that looks like. You know, I mean, our character and our integrity is built when nobody's watching. And that's what people need to understand is you can't go out there and be a walking, eating, breathing hypocrite like I was for years, telling the world to do one thing when I wasn't even doing it.
Right.
I mean, because it's counterintuitive. And then ultimately, you got to face yourself. And at the end of the day, I want to be in love with the person looking back at me in the mirror, knowing that everything in my life will be dictated off that emotion. Everything. And that's why it's super important to ask for help, man, because you can't get there alone, and that's okay. It's supposed to be that way.
Right.
That's by design. You know, we're herd animals. We need each other. That's Adam and Eve. You know, he knew one wouldn't cut it.
So when did you decide to turn all this pain and experience into helping other people?
You know, I think at a really young age, man, is when I decided at 8 years old I was going to be a Marine. And I just never told anybody. But I remember being 5 years old and being with my grandmother, my Mimi, she was my homie, man. She was the matriarch of the family and the wife of first generation Marine. Tough. As my gunny used to say, she was harder than woodpecker lips, too. Like, she was tough. But, man, she loved me. And she taught me so much. Like, she taught me what service above self and servant leadership and all those things look like. Because I got to go with her to the nursing homes and the VFW halls, and I would just watch her work. And I just was in awe of her because she just poured herself into people. And, you know, it was because it was a continuation of what my grandfather and his brethren started in World War II. And that the reason we won that war is it was a global effort. Like, we all came together in this country for that war. You know, it was a unified front, and we were all together. I mean, that's why we won World War II. That's why we're back-to-back World War champs. A lot like the people of 9/12. If we could be the people of 9/12 without the 9/11, we would be untouchable, extremely untouchable. But right now, we're as vulnerable in the worst of ways than we've ever been because of division. And so for me, it's like unless you can lean in on your fellow human, regardless of race, color, creed, religion, we're screwed. Because right now all we're doing is we're doing the placating to societal standards, and we're allowing the government to use us as pawns against each other, and it's making us weaker by default, which in turn gives them more power. We have to stop with all that. We have to come together and operate as one unified front, because whether you were born here or not, whether you are here on a work visa, regardless of what it is, we're all Americans. That by default should be enough. You can have whatever religion you want or don't want, or job you want or don't want, whatever. I don't give a damn, because I left blood on the battlefield for you to do whatever the hell you want to do. But first and foremost, we all bleed red, and we're all Americans. And either we're going to step up and lead and have a unified front and show the rest of the world what this looks like and what coming together as a melting pot, which is what we are, and living well looks like, or we're going to crumble. Because in case anyone hasn't noticed, we're eating ourselves from the inside out.
100%.
And so I know this is I'm not going to stop, because I have two boys that I expect to have more opportunity and a better life than I've had. And I've had a pretty damn good life, all things considered. I mean, I've had a couple bumps along the way. But hey, I mean, it's like a World War II vet told me on the way to Vegas one time. He looked at me and said, "Just remember, young man, bad breath's better than no breath." And I was like, damn, that's like profound coming from a 90-something-year-old.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah,
man. What's one piece of advice for anyone that was in that spot, that's in that spot right now that you were at, that darkness?
Everything that we aspire to be is on the other side of fear. Everything. And you can only stay there. This is what I think. This is what I would tell them, because I believe this, because this is my life, right? So if you live in a cesspool of shit and you're in one, but you're comfortable there, it's familiar. Same sounds, same smells. Usually involves isolating. You're there, but you're comfortable there. And there's not a lot of unknowns. You know what healthy looks like, but it's the journey that scares you. What am I going to lose along the way? What am I going to gain along the way? How much am I going to have to sacrifice? That's what that comes down to. We were at a meeting last week with this guy who was pissed off and has every right to be pissed off. And he said, "I don't believe in the saying that you can only help those that want to be helped. I think it's bullshit." And I was like, "Hey, I'm sorry, man, but that's a fact." Because I'm walking, living, eating, breathing proof. I didn't get well till I decided I want to get well. It was really when God poked his head through the ceiling and said, "If you don't change your ways, you're going to be the next one they bury." And if you can just be convicted in the fact that you're worthy of loving and being loved, bad days and hard days are guaranteed. Guaranteed. But if you choose not to stay where you are and to move forward and do it in grace, nobody's fault. Have ownership. Why are you where you are? What role did you play? Because you can achieve anything as long as you're drawing breath. Implementing a permanent solution to a temporary problem, all that does is leave a wake of pain that's never ending. It goes on. It's generational. It's known as generational trauma. It never stops. You have to make the decision to step up. Ask for help. There's resources out there. And utilize them. Go do something for someone without the intention of them ever paying you back, and let that be your starting point.
Last question for you. What does the 38 challenge mean to you?
Dude, that's a good question. because I've been doing 38 challenge for a lot longer than probably you've been alive. And you know what it means to me though is it's a hell of a lot more personal to me than I wish it were. But instead of, because I mean I've buried 34 of my close friends who've died by suicide, and I only know 8 that were killed in combat. And not only it's by means of making that 8 insignificant, because clearly that's not what I mean.
Yeah.
But I learned a long time ago that the outcome of these individuals' paths are between them and God. And so instead of being upset or mourning their loss, I want instead to celebrate their life. And I want to live well in a way that is worthy of their legacy. You know, I don't ever want to go meet my maker and be told by one of them, you could have done more. Or you didn't do enough, or whatever. But I know this, all while knowing this, that every night my head hits the pillow, like I know if I ask myself, did you do enough to honor the sacrifices of the warriors of the Chosen Reservoir? Did you do enough to honor the legacy of the warriors of the Battle of Belleau Wood or Chapultepec or Normandy? The answer is always no. It's always no. But that's in of itself is a reason for getting up the next day. And for me, the 38 challenge is just a constant reminder. I mean, look, we did the 22 push-up challenge a decade ago. It's just another form of reminding people you're going to have bad days. That's okay. And it's okay to not be okay. The only thing that sucks worse than suffering by yourself. But the more vocal we can be about the humans that we are and the vulnerabilities that we have, the stronger you're going to be. And it's like I told you a long time ago. It's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done because it should be the most rewarding. And that's by design. It's not supposed to be easy. And the more you do, the more naysayers there are going to be, and the point the finger, and those are usually the keyboard warriors that sit on their ass and choose not to do shit. There's no shortage of those. What does it mean to me? It means if it can make my sons see that regardless of the ability that a human being has, you're not more than one step away from the worst ever, the worst outcome. If you have a death grip on your pride, ask for help. It's okay. Ask for help, man. Like, look, I want to help all people, like one tribe, human tribe. And if this select group can be the tip of the spear for the rest of humans to lean in and love hard in order to live well, right on. I don't give a shit who gets the credit.
Right.
I just want to leave this world better than I found it. So, embrace the suck, because the more you do, the harder it gets.
100%, man. Well, I think we'll call it a wrap there.
It's your show, bro.
I appreciate you, and I love you very much, man.
I love you, dude.
More than you know.
Hey, you're not alone. And, your family's not. We're all in this together. We always have been. We just sometimes have to be put in very gnarly situations to realize it. But, it is what it is. Better late than never.
100%.
So, I'm here, and you know that I'm not going to lie to you.
Love you, man.
Love you, bro.